The afternoon sun filters through the Venetian blinds of Carolyn Mitchell's corner office in downtown Seattle, casting sharp lines across her mahogany desk. At 42, she possesses the kind of quiet elegance that comes from years of carefully controlled composure. Shoulder-length auburn hair, always perfectly styled, tailored charcoal suits that speak of understated wealth, and hazel eyes that miss nothing. She sits reviewing tenant files for the Riverside Apartments, a mid-century brick building she acquired 18 months ago through a labyrinth of shell companies and anonymous trusts. Her husband of 15 years, Marcus, knows nothing about it. Caroline's fingers pause on a particular file. Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez, 78, apartment 4B. 23 years in residence. Rent always paid on time until her husband died 6 months ago. Now she's 2 months behind. Caroline makes a note to contact her personally to work out a payment plan. She's about to close the file when her phone buzzes with a text from Marcus. Need to talk tonight. Important business matter. She feels that familiar tightening in her chest, the one that's been there since she discovered his affair 2 years ago. Not just any affair. With Jennifer, her former business partner, the woman who helped Caroline build her first real estate consultancy from nothing. Marcus had apologized, begged, promised it meant nothing. Caroline had stayed, but something fundamental had calcified inside her. She'd begun planning, quietly acquiring assets he knew nothing about, building a separate financial fortress he couldn't touch. That evening, their modern craftsman home in Queen Anne feels cavernous despite its warmth. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook Elliott Bay, the water dark and choppy. Marcus enters the kitchen where Caroline is preparing dinner, his 6-foot frame still imposing at 45, his salt and pepper hair giving him a distinguished air that had first attracted her in graduate school. He loosens his tie and pours himself bourbon. Never a good sign. Hey everyone, before we deep into this story, like and tell me where you're watching from. I'm taking over management of the Riverside Apartments, he announces, not sitting. Dad's firm acquired the building 6 months ago through some investment group. He's putting me in charge of turning it around. Finally, a real project of my own. Caroline's knife stills against the cutting board. The Riverside. Her building. The one she purchased specifically because Marcus's father, Gerald Mitchell, had tried to buy it for his commercial real estate empire. She'd outbid him anonymously. A small private victory. And now this. The Riverside on Capitol Hill, she asks, her voice carefully neutral. Yeah, it's a money pit right now. Too many long-term tenants paying below market rent. Too much deferred maintenance. Dad wants me to clean house, raise rents, push out the dead weight, renovate, and flip to luxury units. Marcus takes a long drink. It's exactly what I've been waiting for. A chance to prove I can handle the big projects. Caroline turns back to the vegetables, her mind racing. When do you start? Monday. I'm already reviewing the tenant list. There's this old woman in 4B, 2 months behind on rent. She's first on the eviction list. The knife slips, nearly catching Caroline's finger. Mrs. Vasquez, the widow who'd baked cookies for every new tenant, who'd organized the building's community garden, who'd lived there longer than Caroline and Marcus had been married. You're evicting an elderly woman? Caroline keeps her tone measured, academic curiosity rather than judgment. Marcus shrugs, refilling his glass. It's business, Caroline. You know how this works. We can't run a charity. Besides, there are programs for people like her. She'll figure it out. People like her. Caroline remembers Marcus's previous business ventures. The restaurant that failed because he refused to listen to his chef, the investment property he mismanaged into foreclosure, the consulting gig his father created to keep him employed. This is Gerald's latest attempt to manufacture success for his perpetually underperforming son. Maybe you could work with her, Caroline suggests. Set up a payment plan. And look weak right out of the gate? No. Dad says the first thing you do is establish authority. Show the other tenants you mean business. He moves behind her, kisses her neck. Hey, maybe once I turn this around, we can finally take that trip to Tuscany you've been wanting. Caroline stands rigid, feeling the weight of his lips on her skin. Knowing about the 6-month affair she'd discovered through credit card receipts and hotel charges. Jennifer had at least had the decency to move to Portland afterward. Marcus thought Caroline had forgiven, had moved past it. She'd let him believe that while she quietly dismantled any vulnerability he could exploit. Over the weekend, Caroline watches Marcus prepare. He spreads documents across their dining room table, tenant files he's not supposed to bring home, building assessments, renovation proposals. She sees Mrs. Vasquez's file marked with a red flag, priority eviction. Also flagged, the Rodriguez family with 3 children who've lived there 8 years, and James Chen, a graduate student working nights to pay his way through medical school. Sunday night, Marcus practices his management speech in the mirror. Caroline watches from the bedroom doorway. This man she once loved completely, now a stranger wearing a familiar face. "You're going to be great," she tells him, the lie smooth as silk. Monday morning, Caroline arrives at her office early. She makes 2 phone calls, one to her lawyer, Patricia Kwan, and one to the property management company that handles Riverside Apartments under her anonymous trust. By 10 a.m., everything is in motion. At 11, she receives the call she's been expecting. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Patricia. Marcus just served eviction notices to 7 tenants, including Mrs. Vasquez. He's scheduled a building meeting for Wednesday to announce the renovations and rent increases." "Perfect," Caroline says. "I'll be there." Wednesday evening, the community room at Riverside Apartments fills with anxious tenants. The space is modest but well-maintained. Caroline had approved the budget for new chairs and fresh paint last year. Marcus stands at the front near a projection screen, his father Gerald beside him, both men in expensive suits that scream authority. Caroline slips in the back, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled into a casual ponytail. She's unrecognizable as the polished professional from her office. She takes a seat next to Mrs. Vasquez, who clutches a tissue in trembling hands. Marcus begins his presentation: market analysis, renovation plans, the exciting new direction for the building. He speaks about property values and return on investment, never once mentioning the people who've made Riverside Apartments a community rather than just a building. "Now, some of you have received notices," Marcus continues, his voice taking on what he probably thinks is a sympathetic tone. "We understand change is difficult, but we're offering fair market value buyouts for anyone who wants to relocate voluntarily. Those who choose not to accept will face rent increases of 40 to 60% upon lease renewal." The room erupts. Voices overlap: anger, fear, desperation. Mrs. Vasquez begins to cry softly. Gerald Mitchell holds up his hand for silence. "Folks, this is progress. This neighborhood is changing. You can either be part of that change or what?" Caroline stands, her voice cutting through the noise. "Or you'll force out people who've lived here for decades?" Marcus's eyes find her in the crowd. His face registers shock, then confusion, then a flash of anger. "Caroline, what are you—" "I'm a tenant," she says smoothly. "Well, actually, that's not quite accurate." She walks to the front of the room, pulling a folded document from her bag. "I'm the owner." The silence is absolute. Marcus's face goes white. Gerald's jaw tightens. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus manages. Caroline hands the document to him. "Verification of ownership. Riverside Apartments was purchased 18 months ago by the Castellan Investment Trust. I am the sole trustee and beneficiary." She turns to address the room. "These eviction notices are invalid. Marcus Mitchell has no authority to make decisions regarding this property because his father's firm never acquired it." Gerald snatches the papers from Marcus's hands, scanning them rapidly. Caroline watches color flood into his face, rage replacing shock. "This is impossible," Gerald spits. "We had the winning bid." "You had a bid," Caroline corrects. "Mine was higher and anonymous. I'm sure you remember losing that deal, Gerald. You complained about it for weeks." Marcus finds his voice. You bought this building? When? Why?" "I bought it because it's a good investment. I bought it anonymously because I wanted to keep my business separate from our marriage. Something you clearly don't understand the importance of." Caroline keeps her tone professional, but every person in the room hears the underlying edge. "You deliberately sabotaged me," Marcus says, his voice rising. "You knew Dad was giving me this project." "I didn't know that until 3 days ago. What I did know is that Gerald was trying to acquire this property to demolish it and build luxury condos. I prevented that. The fact that he then lied to you about owning it so you could play property manager, that's between you and your father. Gerald steps forward. This is fraud. You used inside information. I used publicly available sale listings and made a legitimate offer through legal channels. If anyone committed fraud, it was you, claiming to own property you don't and authorizing your son to issue eviction notices without authority. Caroline pulls out her phone. I have my attorney on speed dial. Would you like to continue this conversation legally? The room has dissolved into murmuring. Mrs. Vasquez is staring at Caroline with something like hope. The Rodriguez family is whispering urgently. Marcus looks like he might be sick. Everybody, Caroline raises her voice slightly. Your rents are staying as they are. Your leases are secure. Mrs. Vasquez, I have your payment plan ready in my office for whenever you're ready to sign it. Mr. Chen, I saw your application for the Tenant Scholarship Fund. It's approved. The Rodriguez family, I think we can work something out regarding that additional bedroom you requested. The energy in the room shifts dramatically. Relief, gratitude, confusion, but no more fear. Caroline turns back to Marcus. You need to leave now. You're trespassing. I'm your husband. Then act like it at home. But here, you're just someone trying to evict my tenants. She softens her voice just slightly. Marcus, you didn't even review the ownership documents. You just believe what your father told you because it's what you wanted to believe. You were ready to destroy people's lives for a project you never actually had authority over. Gerald grabs Marcus's arm. We're leaving. But this isn't over, Caroline. Actually, it is, she replies. I filed a formal complaint with the Property Management Board about your firm's fraudulent representation. You might want to call your lawyers. As father and son leave, the room erupts again, but this time with questions for Caroline. She spends the next hour answering them, explaining her plans for the building, listening to concerns and suggestions. She feels lighter than she has in 2 years. At home past midnight, Caroline finds Marcus sitting in the dark living room, bourbon bottle beside him. You humiliated me, he says flatly. No, you humiliated yourself. I just owned a building. Why didn't you tell me? Caroline sits across from him, finally meeting his eyes fully. 2 years ago, I came home early and found hotel receipts in your jacket. Jennifer had left her earring on our bedroom nightstand. I knew Marcus. I've known the entire time. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. Caroline, I didn't leave because I was afraid. Afraid of losing everything we'd built. Afraid of starting over. Afraid of looking like a failure. She leans forward. So instead, I built something you couldn't touch. Something that was entirely mine. The Riverside was just the beginning. I have 3 other properties. A portfolio worth $7 million, all separate from our marital assets. You've been planning to leave me. It's not a question. I've been planning to survive you. There's a difference. Caroline stands. What happens next is up to you. We can separate cleanly, or you can fight me and lose everything, including your father's respect when he finds out why I really started building my empire. Marcus looks broken, smaller somehow. I'm sorry about Jennifer, about all of it. I know you are, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust, Marcus, and it doesn't change the fact that you were ready to evict an elderly widow to impress your father. She moves toward the stairs. I'm sleeping in the guest room. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps, real ones. In the quiet of the guest room, Caroline finally allows herself to feel everything. The anger, the satisfaction, the grief for what they'd lost, the exhilaration of reclaiming her power. She'd bought the Riverside apartments as an investment, yes, but also as insurance. She'd never imagined it would become the stage for this particular confrontation. Her phone buzzes, a text from Mrs. Vasquez. Thank you for saving our home. You're an angel. Caroline smiles in the darkness. Not an angel, just a woman who'd learned the hard way that sometimes the only person you can truly count on is yourself. She'd spent 18 months building a fortress, and tonight it had proven impenetrable. Whatever happened with Marcus now, she would be fine. More than fine. She'd finally learned what she should have known all along. The best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something so solid that nothing, not betrayal, not lies, not attempted evictions, can touch it. And in the process of seeking retribution, she'd accidentally become the person she'd always wanted to be. Someone with the power to protect not just herself, but others who needed it. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd bought a building to spite her father-in-law. She'd kept it secret to protect herself from her husband. But in the end, it had transformed her into something neither man had anticipated. Someone who couldn't be controlled, manipulated, or destroyed. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations, probably legal battles, certainly the end of her marriage as she'd known it. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Caroline Mitchell slept soundly. She owned the building. But more importantly, she owned herself. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share.